The moon festival ended in blood, as Sira knew it would. She pressed herself against the rough stone wall of the abandoned grain store, her breath coming in shallow gasps that misted in the winter air. Outside, the screams had finally stopped. The drums had fallen silent. Now there was only the sound of wolves howling in the distant mountains, their voices rising and falling like a dirge for the dead. Sira had not attended the festival. She never did. Orphans without surnames were not welcome at the marking ceremonies, where young wolves pledged their loyalty to the pack, and unmated females offered themselves to the alpha's consideration. She had learned years ago to make herself scarce when the moon grew full and the bloodlust rose in the Lycans who ruled the northern territories. But this year, something had changed. The marking ceremony had turned violent. Sira had heard the clash of steel, the roar of beasts transforming mid-battle, the wet sound of flesh tearing. From her hiding place in the abandoned district, where the orphans clustered like rats, she had watched smoke rise from the festival grounds and wondered which of the pack lords had finally challenged King Valdrin for dominance. Everyone knew the Lycan King was cursed. For 7 years, since the night his father died and the crown passed to him, Valdrin Blackmore had struggled to control the beast within. On certain moon cycles, when the lunar pull grew strongest, he became something else entirely. Not man, not wolf, but a creature of pure rage and hunger that could not be reasoned with or restrained. The pack whispered that he had killed during those transformations, that he kept himself chained in the deepest cells of Blackmore Fortress during the dangerous nights, that he had executed 3 of his own guards who had tried to contain him. Sira did not know if the rumors were true. She had never seen the king. In her 19 years of life, she had moved through the capital city of Thornhaven like a ghost, scrubbing floors in the merchant houses, washing linens, carrying water, invisible, disposable, exactly as an orphan should be. The door to the grain store rattled. Sira's heart seized. She had wedged it shut with a broken barrel stave, but the wood was old and brittle. If someone wanted in, they would get in. Please, she whispered, to no one, to the moon, to whatever gods might listen to the prayers of the abandoned. Please, not tonight. The rattling stopped. Sira waited, counting her heartbeats, straining to hear movement beyond the door. The festival grounds were a mile away, but sound carried strangely on nights like this. Nights when the barrier between man and beast grew thin. She heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, not the running of panicked festival-goers fleeing violence, but the measured stride of something hunting. The steps paused outside her door. Sira's hands trembled as she backed deeper into the shadows of the grain store. There was nowhere to run. The only exit was the door, and whatever stood on the other side now blocked her escape. She reached for the small knife she kept hidden in her boot, though she knew it would be useless against a Lycan. Against anything, really. She had never been taught to fight. The door exploded inward, wood splintered. The barrel stave flew across the room and clattered against the far wall. Sira bit back a scream and pressed herself into the corner, knife raised. With shaking hands, a figure filled the doorway. Not a beast. Not yet, but not entirely human either. He was massive, broad-shouldered, and tall enough that he had to duck slightly to enter the grain store. His dark hair was disheveled, hanging past his collar, and his clothes were torn and blood-stained. But it was his eyes that froze Sira in place. They glowed faintly in the darkness, amber gold and inhuman, fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with instinctive terror. "You," he said, his voice rough, barely controlled. "Why can I smell you?" Sira's knife clattered to the floor. The Lycan King stepped into the grain store, and the door swung shut behind him with a sound like a coffin closing. Valdrin had smelled her during the transformation. That should not have been possible. When the curse took him, when the beast clawed its way to the surface and his human consciousness drowned in rage and instinct, he remembered nothing, felt nothing but the need to hunt, to kill, to dominate. The beast did not think. It did not reason. It certainly did not track a single human female through a city of thousands based on scent alone. Yet here he was, standing in an abandoned grain store in the poorest district of Thornhaven, staring at a terrified girl who smelled like rain and night-blooming flowers and something else he could not name. Something that called to the beast even now, as he fought to keep his human form intact. The girl was small, dressed in the rough brown dress of a servant or laborer. Her dark hair had come loose from its braid and fell around her face in tangled waves. She was pale, her eyes wide with fear, and she looked ready to bolt like a rabbit that had just realized the wolf was upon it. Valdrin forced himself to remain still. He could feel the beast pacing beneath his skin, wanting out, wanting her. The transformation had ended minutes ago, but the lunar pull was still strong. The full moon would not wane until dawn, and until then, he was dangerous. I will not hurt you, he said, though his voice came out harsher than he intended. But you need to tell me who you are. The girl shook her head, her back pressed against the wall as though she could sink through it and disappear. No one, she whispered. I'm no one. Valdrin's hands clenched into fists. The scent of her fear was making the beast worse. It did not understand restraint. It did not care that she was human and fragile and clearly unprepared for any of this. Your name? He growled. Syrah. The word was barely audible. Just Syrah, no surname. I'm an orphan. I work in the merchant houses when they need extra hands. I wasn't at the festival. I didn't see anything. Please, I don't know anything. An orphan. No family. No pack. No one who would miss her if she disappeared. The thought sent a spike of something cold and furious through Valdrin's chest. He did not know this girl, had never seen her before tonight, but the idea of her being alone and unprotected in a city full of predators made his jaw tighten. Why are you hiding here? He asked. Syrah's gaze flickered to the broken door, then back to him. She was calculating her chances of escape. Valdrin could see it in the slight shift of her weight, the tension in her shoulders. She would not make it 3 steps before he caught her. The festival, she said finally. I heard the fighting. I thought it was safer to stay hidden. You were right. Valdrin moved closer slowly, the way he might approach a wounded animal. Syrah flinched, but did not run. Up close, the scent of her was overwhelming. It wrapped around him like a physical thing, drowning out the stench of blood and smoke that clung to his clothes. His beast went quiet, utterly, completely quiet. Valdrin froze. In 7 years, nothing had calmed the beast. Not chains, not spell work, not the strongest sedatives his healers could concoct. The curse that had taken root the night his father died was absolute. On the nights when the moon's pull was strongest, Valdrin became a monster. There was no controlling it, no reasoning with it. But now, standing in a filthy grain store with a terrified orphan girl who smelled like impossible things, the beast was still. What are you? Valdrin breathed. Syrah's eyes widened. I told you. I'm no one, just an orphan. I don't have any power. I'm not a witch or a healer or anything useful. I'm sorry if I did something wrong by being here. I'll leave. I'll go right now. You'll never see me again. She moved toward the door. Valdrin caught her wrist without thinking. The moment his skin touched hers, the world tilted. Heat flooded through him. Not the burning rage of the transformation, but something warmer. Something that felt like coming home after years of wandering lost in the dark. The bond snapped into place with a force that drove the air from his lungs. Mate, the word echoed through his mind, through his beast, through every instinct he possessed. This girl, this orphan with no surname and no status, was his fated mate. The one the moon had chosen for him. The one who could tame the curse. Syrah gasped and tried to pull away. Valdrin released her immediately, stumbling back as though she had burned him. No, he said hoarsely. This cannot be. But the bond was there, bright and undeniable, thrumming between them like a living thing. And from the way Syrah was staring at him, her hand pressed to her chest as though she could feel her heart trying to beat its way free, she felt it too. Syrah did not understand what was happening. One moment, she had been terrified, cornered by the Lycan King himself in a grain store that smelled of dust and decay. The next, his hand had closed around her wrist, and the world had caught fire, not literally. There were no flames, but something had ignited inside her chest. Something that burned and ached and pulled toward the massive, dangerous man, who now stood across the room looking at her as though she had just destroyed his entire world. What did you do to me? Syrah whispered. The king's jaw clenched. I did nothing. The bond shows. What bond? He turned away from her, one hand braced against the wall, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled, every word measured. A mate bond. It is rare among Lycans, but it exists. When the moon chooses 2 souls to be joined, the bond forms on first touch. It cannot be broken. It cannot be denied. Syrah's legs felt weak. She sank down onto an overturned crate, her mind reeling. A mate bond. With the Lycan King. With a man she had never met, whose face she could barely see in the darkness, who was cursed and powerful, and so far above her station that the very idea was absurd. "No," she said. "That's not possible. I'm an orphan. I'm nothing. The moon wouldn't choose me for a king." Valdrin's laugh was bitter. "The moon has a cruel sense of humor." He turned back to face her, and in the faint light filtering through the broken door, Syrah could finally see him clearly. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps 30 at most, with a hard angular face that might have been handsome if not for the scars that crossed his left cheek and the exhaustion that shattered his eyes. He looked like a man who had not slept well in years. "This changes everything," Valdrin said quietly. "If the pack learns that I have found my mate, they will expect me to claim you, to complete the bond, to make you queen." The word queen sat between them like a stone. Syrah shook her head violently. "I can't be a queen. I don't know how to read properly. I've never worn a dress that wasn't second-hand. I've never even been inside Blackmoor Fortress. You need to find someone else. There is no one else." Valdrin's voice was flat. "The bond chose you. That means you are the only one who can calm the beast. The only one who can break the curse." Syrah's breath caught. "The curse. The one that makes you transform." "Yes. And you think I can stop it?" Valdrin moved closer, his gaze intense. "When I touched you, the beast went silent. For the first time in 7 years, it was not trying to claw its way free. It was peaceful. Do you understand what that means? You are the answer I have been searching for. The one thing that can give me back control." Syrah stood abruptly, panic rising in her throat. "I didn't ask for this. I don't want to be the answer to anything. I just want to be left alone. That is no longer an option." The words were not cruel, but they were absolute. Valdrin was not offering her a choice. He was stating a fact. Syrah felt the walls closing in. The grain store suddenly seemed impossibly small, the air too thick to breathe. She had spent her entire life trying to be invisible, trying to avoid attention, trying to survive one day at a time without drawing the notice of anyone powerful enough to hurt her. And now the most powerful Lycan in the kingdom was telling her that she was his mate, that she was destined to stand at his side, that she could not refuse. "What if I run?" she asked, her voice breaking. Valdrin's expression darkened. "Then I will find you. The bond will not let me do otherwise. I will track you to the ends of the earth if I must." "That's not fair." "No," he agreed. "It is not, but it is the way of things." Syrah pressed her hands to her face, trying to think, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. But there was none. The bond hummed between them, a constant reminder that something fundamental had changed. She could feel it even now, a pull toward him that made her want to close the distance, to touch him again, to see if that impossible warmth would return. She hated it. "I need time," she said finally, "to think, to understand what this means." Valdrin was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You will come to Blackmoor Fortress tomorrow at sunset. I will send a guard to escort you from wherever you are staying. We will speak further then. And if I don't come?" His eyes flashed gold. "Then I will come for you myself. And I will not be in a patient mood." It was not a threat. It was a promise. Syrah swallowed hard and nodded. She did not trust her voice to say anything more. Valdrin turned toward the broken door, then paused. "One more thing. Tell no one about the bond. Not until I have decided how to handle the pack's reaction. If word spreads before I am ready, it could put you in danger." "Danger from what?" "From those who would rather see me remain cursed than accept a mate of common blood." With that, he stepped out into the night and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Syrah alone in the grain store with a bond she did not want and a future she could not escape. Syrah did not sleep. She spent the hours until dawn pacing the small room she shared with 3 other orphan girls in the Eastern District, her mind racing with everything that had happened. The bond still thrummed beneath her skin, a constant awareness of Valdrin's presence somewhere in the city. She could feel him, distant but undeniable, like a compass needle pointing north. By the time the sun rose, Syrah had made her decision. She would not go to Blackmoor Fortress. She would leave Thornhaven entirely. The bond might pull at her, but she had endured worse pains in her life. She would go south, to one of the human settlements beyond the Lycan territories, and she would disappear. Valdrin had said he would find her, but he was a king. He had a kingdom to rule. Surely he would not waste months searching for one insignificant orphan when there were far more important matters demanding his attention. Syrah packed her few belongings into a canvas sack, moved through the morning with mechanical efficiency. and was halfway to the city gates when a hand closed around her arm. Going somewhere? The voice was female, cool and amused. Sira turned to find a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that glowed faintly amber. A Lycan, one of the king's guard, based on the black uniform she wore. I'm leaving the city, Sira said, trying to keep her voice steady. I have family in the south. I need to visit them. The woman's smile was sharp. Strange. The king mentioned you were an orphan. No family at all. Yet here you are, fleeing toward the southern gates with a pack on your back and lies on your tongue. Sira's heart sank. He sent you. He did. And he was very specific about his instructions. I am to escort you to Blackmore Fortress. Gently, if you are willing. Less gently, if you are not. I'm not going, the woman sighed. I was afraid you would say that. Before Sira could react, the woman moved with inhuman speed, lifting her off the ground and slinging her over one shoulder like a sack of grain. Sira yelped and tried to struggle, but it was useless. The Lycan's strength was absolute. Put me down. No, this is kidnapping. This is following orders. The woman began walking toward the fortress, her pace unhurried. My name is Mira, by the way. I have been the king's guard captain for 5 years. And you, little orphan, have caused quite a stir. Sira stopped struggling, realizing it was pointless. He told you about the bond. He did not have to. I can smell it on both of you. The whole guard can. A mate bond has a distinct scent, like lightning before a storm. There has not been a royal mate bond in this kingdom for 3 generations. You are about to become the most talked about woman in Thornhaven. I don't want that. Few people want the destiny the moon gives them, Mira said. But we bear it nonetheless. The fortress loomed ahead, a massive structure of black stone that sprawled across the northern hill like a sleeping beast. Sira had seen it from a distance all her life, but she had never been close enough to appreciate how truly enormous it was. Towers rose toward the sky, their peaks crowned with iron spikes. Walls thick enough to withstand a siege surrounded the main keep. Guards patrolled the battlements, their armor gleaming in the morning light. Mira carried Sira through the main gates without slowing. The guards did not question her. They simply stepped aside, their expressions carefully neutral. Though Sira caught more than one curious glance in her direction, inside the fortress, the air was cooler, the stone corridors lit by torches that cast flickering shadows on the walls. Mira finally set Sira down in a large chamber that appeared to be some kind of sitting room. Furniture upholstered in dark leather filled the space, and a fire crackled in the hearth. Wait here, Mira said. The king will join you shortly. She left before Sira could protest. Sira stood in the center of the room, her hands clenched at her sides, and considered her options. She could try to run again, but she suspected Mira was still nearby, waiting for exactly that. She could refuse to speak to Valdrin when he arrived, though she doubted silence would accomplish anything. Or she could face this situation head-on and try to make him understand that she was not the right choice for a mate. The door opened, Valdrin entered, and Sira's breath caught despite herself. In the daylight, without blood and shadows obscuring him, he was imposing in a way that went beyond mere physical size. He wore simple black clothing, no crown or ornaments, but there was no mistaking him for anything other than what he was. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. You tried to run, he said, without preamble. Yes, why? Sira met his gaze, refusing to look away, even though every instinct screamed at her to submit. Because I do not want this bond. I did not choose it, and I will not be forced into a life I never asked for. Valdrin's expression was unreadable. Do you think I chose this? Do you think I wanted my mate to be a common orphan with no training, no status, and no understanding of how to navigate pack politics? The words stung, but Sira lifted her chin. Then we agree. We are both poorly matched. Release me from the bond. I cannot. You are the king. Surely you have that power. No one has that power. Valdrin crossed the room to stand before her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. The mate bond is forged by the moon herself. It cannot be broken by mortal will. And even if it could, I would not. You are the only thing that has calmed the beast in 7 years. I will not give that up, so I am just a tool to you, Sira said bitterly. Something useful. Valdrin's jaw tightened. You are my mate. That makes you far more than useful. He reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek, but not quite touching. Sira could feel the bond pulling her toward him, urging her to close the distance, to feel that impossible warmth again. She forced herself to remain still. I will make you a bargain, Valdrin said quietly. Stay here for 1 week. Let me teach you what it means to be a Lycan's mate. If at the end of that week, you still wish to leave, I will not stop you. Syrah's eyes narrowed. You swear it? On my father's grave. It was not much, but it was more than she had expected. A week, 7 days to endure this bond, and then her freedom. She could manage that. Fine, Syrah said. 1 week. Valdrin's hand dropped to his side. Then we begin now. The first lesson was control. Valdrin brought Syrah to the fortress's training yard, a large open space surrounded by high walls, where the pack's warriors practiced their combat skills. Syrah had expected to be taught etiquette or politics, or whatever it was that queens were supposed to know. She had not expected to be handed a wooden practice sword and told to defend herself. I don't know how to fight, she protested. Then you will learn. Valdrin gestured to Mira, who stood nearby with her arms crossed and an expression of grim amusement. A mate must be able to protect herself, especially a mate who will be a target for anyone seeking to weaken the king. Syrah hefted the practice sword awkwardly. It was heavier than it looked, the wood dense and solid. I thought you said you would protect me. I will, but I cannot be with you every moment. And the bond makes you vulnerable in ways you do not yet understand. Before Syrah could ask what he meant, Valdrin nodded to Mira. The guard captain moved with terrifying speed, her own practice sword whistling through the air toward Syrah's head. Syrah yelped and ducked, the blade passing over her by inches. Too slow, Mira said. Already swinging again. Syrah raised her sword to block, but the impact jarred her arms so badly she nearly dropped the weapon. Mira did not relent. She attacked again and again, driving Syrah back across the yard with a relentless series of strikes that Syrah had no hope of countering. Within minutes, Syrah was on the ground, her sword knocked from her hand, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Enough, Valdrin said. Mira stepped back immediately. Valdrin approached and extended a hand to help Syrah to her feet. She ignored it, pushing herself up on her own. Her pride was bruised worse than her body. I told you I don't know how to fight, she said through gritted teeth, and now you understand why you must learn. Valdrin's expression was serious. The pack respects strength. If you cannot defend yourself, they will see you as weak. And weak mates do not survive long in this world. Syrah wanted to argue, to tell him that she had survived 19 years without anyone's training or protection, but she knew it would sound hollow. She had survived by being invisible. As Valdrin's mate, invisibility was no longer an option. Again, she said, picking up her sword. Valdrin's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. Again, they trained until the sun began to set, until Syrah's arms ached and her legs trembled with exhaustion. Mira did not hold back, and Valdrin did not intervene except to offer occasional corrections to Syrah's stance or grip. By the time they finished, Syrah could barely lift her sword, but she had managed to block 3 of Mira's strikes in a row. It was progress. Small, painful progress, but progress nonetheless. You did well, Valdrin said, as they walked back toward the fortress. Syrah shot him a skeptical look. I was terrible. You were untrained. That is different from being terrible. You did not give up, even when Mira knocked you down 6 times. That matters more than skill. They entered the fortress through a side entrance, and Valdrin led her up a winding staircase to a corridor lined with heavy wooden doors. He stopped before one and pushed it open. This will be your room, he said. For the week, Syrah stepped inside and froze. The room was larger than the entire space she had shared with the other orphans. A massive bed dominated one wall, draped in furs and thick blankets. A wardrobe stood in the corner, and a writing desk sat beneath a window that overlooked the city. It was the most luxurious space Syrah had ever seen. This is too much, she said. This is the smallest guest room in the fortress. Valdrin moved to the wardrobe and opened it, revealing several dresses in various shades of blue and gray. Mira guessed your size. If the dresses do not fit, tell her, and she will have them adjusted. Syrah touched one of the dresses, the fabric soft and fine beneath her fingers. Why blue and gray? The colors of Blackmore. Valdrin's voice was quiet. If you are to be my mate, you will wear my house's colors. The words settled over Syrah like a weight. This was real, all of it. The bond, the fortress, the king standing in her room with an expression that was equal parts guarded and vulnerable. I should clean up, Syrah said, suddenly desperate for space. Before dinner, Valdrin nodded and moved toward the door. He paused on the threshold, his hand on the frame. Sira. She looked up. Thank you, he said, for giving me this week. I know it is not what you wanted. Before she could respond, he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Sira sank onto the bed and buried her face in her hands. 1 day down, 6 more to go. She was not sure she would survive them. Valdrin had not told the Pack Council about Sira. He knew he could not keep the secret forever. The bond's scent was too strong, and too many guards had already seen her being brought to the fortress. But he needed time to prepare them, to find the right words to explain why the moon had chosen an orphan with no status and no training to be their queen. Unfortunately, time was a luxury he did not have. On the 3rd day of Sira's stay, the council demanded an audience. Valdrin sat at the head of the long table in the council chamber, flanked by Mira on his left and empty air on his right. 6 Pack lords filled the remaining seats, each representing one of the major Lycan families that served Blackmore. They were all older than Valdrin, all more experienced in politics and manipulation, and all looking at him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Lord Kale spoke first. He was the eldest of the council, a grizzled warrior with a scar that bisected his face from temple to jaw. We have heard rumors, Your Majesty. Rumors about a human girl residing in the fortress. Rumors about a bond. Valdrin kept his expression neutral. Rumors are common in this city. These rumors carry the scent of truth. Lady Azara leaned forward, her sharp eyes fixed on Valdrin. You have found your mate. There was no point in denying it. The council would discover the truth eventually. Better to control the narrative now. I have, Valdrin said calmly. Her name is Sira. The bond formed 3 nights ago. The chamber erupted. Questions flew from all sides, voices overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief and anger. Valdrin let them vent for several moments before raising his hand for silence. Enough. I will answer your concerns, but you will do so one at a time. Lord Kale rose to his feet. This girl is human, common, an orphan, with no lineage and no power. How can you expect the Pack to accept her as queen? The moon chose her, Valdrin said flatly. That is the only lineage that matters. The moon has made mistakes before, Lady Azara said coldly. We all remember what happened to King Torin when he claimed a mate the Pack did not accept. Valdrin's jaw tightened. King Torin had been his grandfather, and the mate bond had torn the kingdom apart. The Pack had split into factions, civil war had erupted, and Torin had died in battle against his own people. It was a warning that every Lycan King learned from birth. The Pack's approval was not optional. Sira is not a threat, Valdrin said. She wants nothing to do with power or politics. She is here because the bond demands it, not because she seeks to rule. Then she is weak, Lord Renner said, his voice dripping with contempt. A queen must be strong. She must command respect. This orphan will do neither. She will learn, or she will die. Lady Isara's words were blunt. You know the law, Valdrin. If a mate cannot survive the Pack's challenges, she has no place at your side. And there will be challenges. Many of them. Valdrin's hands clenched beneath the table. The law of challenges was ancient and absolute. Any Lycan could challenge the king's mate to prove her worthiness. The challenges could be physical, mental, or political, and they did not end until the mate either earned the Pack's respect or died trying. Sira has a week to prove herself, Valdrin said. After that we will address the challenges. A week is not enough time to prepare someone with no training, Lord Kale said. Then she will fail quickly. And you will have your answer. Valdrin stood, signaling the end of the meeting. But until that week is over, she is under my protection. Anyone who harms her will answer to me personally. The council members exchanged glances, but did not argue further. They filed out of the chamber one by one, leaving Valdrin alone with Mira. That went better than expected, Mira said dryly. They are planning something. Valdrin turned toward the window, staring out at the city below. Isara's mention of Torin was not accidental. She is reminding me that the Pack can rebel if they choose. Then we need to make sure Sira is ready for the challenges. She is not a warrior. Mira, she is an orphan who has spent her life trying to survive, not to fight. How am I supposed to prepare her for something that will likely kill her? Mira was silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, you could let her go. Valdrin's beast snarled at the suggestion. The thought of releasing Sira, of watching her walk away and never seeing her again, was physically painful. The bond would not allow it. No, he said. I cannot. Then you need to tell her the truth. About the challenges. about what the pack will do to her if she fails. She deserves to know what she is walking into. Valdrin closed his eyes. I know, but the knowing did not make it any easier. Syrah knew something was wrong the moment Valdrin entered her room that evening. He moved with a tension she had not seen before, his shoulders rigid and his expression darker than usual. He did not speak immediately, just stood near the door as though he was trying to decide how to begin. What happened? Syrah asked. Valdrin's gaze met hers. The council knows about you. Syrah's stomach dropped. And they are not pleased. Valdrin moved to the window, his back to her. They believe you are unworthy to be my mate. Too common, too weak. They have invoked the law of challenges. What does that mean? Valdrin's hands gripped the windowsill. It means that members of the pack have the right to challenge you, to test whether you are strong enough to stand at my side. The challenges can be anything: combat, strategy, endurance. If you fail, the pack will not accept you. And if the pack does not accept you, you cannot be queen. Syrah's pulse hammered in her ears. And if I refuse the challenges, then you will be seen as a coward. The bond will remain, but you will never be safe. There will always be those who see you as a weakness to be exploited, so I have no choice. No. Valdrin turned to face her. You do not. Syrah laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. You told me I could leave after a week. You swore on your father's grave. Was that a lie? No. Valdrin's voice was hoarse. But I did not know the council would move so quickly. I thought I would have more time to prepare you. Prepare me for what? To die? Syrah stood, anger flooding through her. You said the bond could not be broken. You said I was your mate, but you did not tell me that being your mate might get me killed. I know. Valdrin's shout echoed through the room. I know, and I am sorry. But this is the world we live in. The pack will not accept you unless you prove yourself. And I cannot change that, no matter how much I wish I could. Syrah pressed her hands to her face, trying to calm the panic, clawing at her chest. She had survived 19 years by being careful, by avoiding danger, by never drawing attention to herself. Now she was being asked to walk directly into the fire. How long do I have? She asked finally. For days. The challenges will begin the day after your week ends. 4 days to learn how to survive a test designed for warriors and nobles. 4 days to become someone she was not. I can't do this, Syrah whispered. Valdrin crossed the room in 3 strides and took her hands in his. The bond flared between them, warm and undeniable. You can. I have seen your strength. You have survived more than most Lycans will ever face. You are not weak, Syrah. You have simply never been given the chance to be strong. Syrah looked up at him, at the intensity in his amber eyes, and felt something shift inside her. Not acceptance exactly, but not surrender either. If I do this, she said slowly, if I face these challenges and somehow survive, what happens then? Then you become queen. You stand at my side. You help me rule this kingdom and break the curse that has plagued me for 7 years. And if I fail? Valdrin's expression softened. Then I will mourn you for the rest of my life. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Syrah realized with a start that he meant it. This terrifying, powerful king who had kidnapped her and bound her to a fate she did not choose, he cared. Perhaps not love, not yet, but something deeper than duty. Teach me, Syrah said. Teach me everything I need to know. And do not hold back because you are afraid of hurting me. If I am going to survive this, I need to be ready. Valdrin's grip on her hands tightened. Then we start tonight. The next 3 days were the hardest of Syrah's life. Valdrin drove her relentlessly, waking her before dawn to train in the yard, spending hours drilling her on pack politics and customs, teaching her how to read the subtle power dynamics that govern every interaction in the fortress. Mira continued the combat training, her strikes faster and more brutal now that they were racing against the clock. Syrah failed constantly. She was knocked to the ground more times than she could count. She stumbled over names and titles. She burned her hand on a ceremonial torch because she did not know the proper way to hold it, but she did not give up. On the final night before the challenges, Valdrin brought her to the fortress's highest tower. The moon was nearly full, its light spilling across the city like molten silver. Syrah could feel the lunar pull herself now, a faint pressure against her skin that made her heartbeat quicken. Tomorrow, the pack will gather in the Great Hall, Valdrin said. You will face 3 challenges. The first will be combat. The second will be knowledge of pack law. The third will be endurance. Syrah nodded, her throat tight. And if I fail any of them, then the bond will remain, but you will not be queen. And the pack will continue to see you as a weakness. Will they try to kill me? Valdrin's silence was answer enough. Sira turned to face him, the moonlight casting his features in sharp relief. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest, always. Do you want me to survive because you care about me, or because you need me to break your curse? Valdrin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough. At first, it was the curse. I will not lie to you. I saw you as salvation, a way to reclaim the control I had lost. But these past days, watching you fight and struggle and refuse to break, it has become more than that. You are brave in ways I did not expect, strong in ways I did not recognize. And if you survive tomorrow, I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that you are worth more than just the cure to my affliction. Sira's breath caught. It was not a declaration of love, but it was honest. And in this moment, honesty was worth more than poetry. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I. Valdrin reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. But fear does not mean weakness. It means you understand what is at stake. The bond hummed between them, stronger than it had ever been. Sira stepped closer, closing the distance until she could feel the warmth of his skin, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. What happens if I win? She asked. Then we complete the bond. I claim you before the pack, and you become mine in truth, and the beast will bow to you as it has never bowed to me. Sira reached up and placed her hand against his chest, feeling the wild thrum of his heart beneath her palm. Then I will win, not for you, not for the pack, but for myself, because I am tired of being invisible. I am tired of being disposable. If I am going to be your mate, then I will be a queen they cannot ignore. Valdrin's eyes blazed gold. Then let us make sure you are ready. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time since the bond had formed, Sira did not resist. She let herself feel the connection, the warmth, the rightness of standing in his embrace. Tomorrow would bring pain and danger, but tonight, she let herself believe that she might actually survive. When Valdrin finally released her, his expression was fierce. Sleep. You will need your strength. Sira nodded and turned toward the stairs. She paused on the first step and looked back. Valdrin? Yes, thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself. His smile was small but genuine. You have already proven more than you know. Sira descended the tower and returned to her room, her mind clearer than it had been in days. Tomorrow, the pack would challenge her. Tomorrow, she would fight for her place in this world. And tomorrow, she would show them all that an orphan could be a queen. The great hall was filled to capacity. Every Lycan in Blackmoor had come to witness the challenges, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and outright hostility. Sira stood at one end of the hall, dressed in a simple fighting tunic in Blackmoor's gray and blue, her hands wrapped in cloth to protect her still healing blisters. Across from her, Valdrin sat on the raised throne, his expression carved from stone. Mira stood beside Sira, her voice low. Remember what I taught you. Watch their feet. Anticipate the strike before it comes. And if you go down, get back up. I will, Sira said, though her voice shook. Lord Kale stepped forward, his voice carrying across the hall. The first challenge is combat. Sira of no surname will face a warrior of the pack's choosing. If she can hold her ground for 5 minutes, she passes. 5 minutes. It sounded like nothing, but Sira had trained with Mira, and she knew that 5 minutes of combat was an eternity. The crowd parted, and a female Lycan stepped into the ring. She was tall and muscular, with scars crisscrossing her arms and a predatory smile. Sira recognized her as one of the fortress guards. Her name is Rena, Mira whispered. She is fast and brutal. Do not let her corner you. Sira nodded, her mouth dry. Lord Kale raised his hand. Begin. Rena moved like lightning. Sira barely had time to raise her wooden sword before Rena's blade crashed into it, the impact jarring her entire body. Rena pressed the attack, her strikes coming in rapid succession, each one designed to break Sira's guard and drive her to the ground. Sira blocked desperately, her arms screaming with the effort. She could hear the crowd murmuring, could feel their eyes on her, waiting for her to fail. Rena swept her leg out, and Sira went down hard. The breath left her lungs in a painful whoosh. Rena's sword came down toward her head. Sira rolled. The blade struck the stone where she had been a heartbeat before. Sira scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding, and raised her sword again. Not bad, Rena said, grinning. But you will have to do better than that. She attacked again, and Syrah fell back into the defensive patterns Mira had drilled into her. Block, parry, step back. Do not let her corner you. Watch her feet. Rena's strikes were brutal, but they followed patterns. Syrah began to see them, the slight shift of weight before a high strike, the tightening of her grip before a thrust. She could not match Rena's strength, but she could anticipate her moves. 3 minutes passed. Then 4. Syrah's arms were trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but she was still standing. Rena's grin had faded, replaced by a look of grudging respect. Time. Lord Kale's voice rang out. Syrah lowered her sword, her legs nearly buckling. She had done it. 5 minutes. She had survived. Rena stepped forward and offered her hand. You fight better than I expected, orphan. Syrah took the hand, her grip weak. Thank you. The crowd was silent, processing what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, a few Lycans began to clap. It was not enthusiastic applause, but it was acknowledgement. Valdrin's gaze met hers across the hall. There was pride in his eyes, and something else. Something that made the bond flare warm in her chest. 1 challenge down. 2 to go. The second challenge was held in the council chamber. Syrah stood before the assembled pack lords, her body still aching from the combat trial. Lord Kale placed a thick tome on the table before her. This is the Book of Laws, he said. It contains the customs, traditions, and legal codes that govern our pack. You will answer 5 questions. If you answer 3 correctly, you pass. Syrah's heart sank. She had studied the book for 3 days, but it was dense and complex, filled with archaic language and references to events she did not understand. Valdrin had done his best to teach her, but 3 days was not enough time to master centuries of tradition. Lady Azara stepped forward. First question. What is the penalty for a Lycan who challenges the king and loses? Syrah took a breath. She knew this one. Death or exile, at the king's discretion. Correct. Lady Isara's expression remained cold. Second question. What is the significance of the Blood Moon Accord? Syrah hesitated. She had read about the Blood Moon Accord, but the details were fuzzy. Something about a treaty. A peace agreement between rival packs. It was. A treaty signed during the Blood Moon to end the war between Blackmoor and the Western Territories, she said slowly. Incorrect. Lady Isara's smile was sharp. The Blood Moon Accord was signed to establish the law of challenges. It had nothing to do with territory disputes. Syrah's stomach twisted. 1 wrong. She could afford 1 more mistake, but no more. The questions continued, each one more difficult than the last. Syrah answered as best she could, drawing on everything Valdrin had taught her, but her confidence wavered with every uncertain response. When the final question came, Lord Kale's expression was unreadable. Last question. What is the king's primary duty to his pack? Syrah stared at him. This was a trick question. She knew it. The obvious answer was protection, or leadership, or justice. But Valdrin had warned her that the council often asked questions with multiple correct answers. And the best response was the one that showed understanding rather than memorization. The king's primary duty, Syrah said carefully, is to serve the pack's needs above his own, to be the shield that stands between them and danger, even when it costs him everything. The room was silent. Lord Kale exchanged a glance with Lady Azara. Then he nodded. Correct. 3 out of 5. You pass. Syrah's knees nearly gave out with relief. She had done it. 2 challenges complete, but the 3rd challenge was still ahead, and it was the one Valdrin had warned her about most. The 3rd challenge took place in the fortress's lower levels, in a chamber Syrah had never seen before. It was a stark, cold room with stone walls and a single torch for light. In the center stood a metal chair with restraints. Syrah's blood ran cold. The final challenge is endurance, Lord Kale said. You will be restrained in the chair and subjected to the lunar pull of the full moon. If you can withstand the pain for 10 minutes without breaking, you pass. Syrah's mouth went dry. What does the lunar pull do? Valdrin stepped forward, his face grim. It is a test designed for Lycans. The moon's pull triggers the transformation instinct. For a human, it will feel like your entire body is being torn apart from the inside. Most humans lose consciousness within seconds. Some die. And you want me to endure this for 10 minutes? If you wish to be queen, Lady Azara said coldly, you must prove you can withstand the same trials as a Lycan. Syrah looked at Valdrin. His expression was tortured, his hands clenched into fists. She could see that he wanted to stop this, to forbid the challenge, but he could not. The law demanded it. I will do it, Sierra said. Valdrin's eyes flashed. Sierra, I will do it. She moved to the chair and sat, extending her wrists for the restraints. Because I am not afraid of pain. I am afraid of being nothing. And I will not let them take this from me. Mira secured the restraints, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry, Sierra. Do not be. Sierra met her gaze. Just make sure you count the time accurately. Lord Kale stepped forward, holding a silver amulet that pulsed with faint light. This contains concentrated lunar energy. When I activate it, you will feel the moon's pull as though it were the full moon at its peak. Brace yourself. He activated the amulet. The pain was immediate and absolute. Sierra screamed. It felt as though her bones were splintering, her skin tearing, her blood boiling in her veins. The bond with Valdrin flared wildly, and she could feel his anguish through it, could sense him fighting the urge to stop the trial and damn the consequences. But she did not break. She gritted her teeth and endured, counting the seconds in her mind, using the pain as a focus rather than a weapon against her. She was an orphan. She had survived hunger and cold and neglect. She had endured 19 years of being invisible, of being nothing. This pain was just one more thing to survive. 8 minutes. 9. Sierra's vision was blurring, her consciousness fraying at the edges. But she held on, clinging to the bond, to Valdrin's presence, to the promise she had made to herself that she would not give up. 10 minutes. Mira's voice cut through the haze. Lord Kale deactivated the amulet. The pain vanished instantly, leaving Sierra gasping and shaking in the chair. Mira released the restraints, and Sierra collapsed forward, her body trembling with aftershocks. Valdrin was at her side in an instant, lifting her into his arms. It is done. She has passed all 3 challenges. The council members exchanged looks, but none of them argued. Lord Kale inclined his head. Then the pack recognizes Sierra as the king's true mate. Let the bond be completed. Valdrin carried Sierra out of the chamber and up to her room, where he laid her gently on the bed. She could barely move, her body wrung out and exhausted, but she managed a weak smile. I did it, she whispered. You did. Valdrin brushed the hair from her face, his touch achingly gentle. You were magnificent. I feel like I am dying. You will recover. I promise. Sierra's eyes drifted closed. Valdrin? Yes? When I wake up. We complete the bond. Yes? Yes. Good. She forced her eyes open again, meeting his gaze. Because I am done being afraid. I want this. I want you. And I want to be the queen this pack deserves. Valdrin's expression softened, and for the first time since they had met, he smiled. A real smile, warm and unguarded. Then rest, my queen. When you wake, we will begin the life we were meant to share. Sierra let herself drift into sleep, the bond humming contentedly between them. She had survived, and now, finally, she could begin to live. Sierra woke to moonlight and the scent of night-blooming flowers. Her body still ached, but the pain was manageable now, a dull throb rather than the searing agony of the endurance trial. She sat up slowly and found Valdrin standing by the window, his silhouette outlined in silver light. How long did I sleep? She asked. A full day and night. He turned to face her. The pack has been asking about you. They are impressed. Impressed that I did not die? Impressed that you endured. No human has ever survived the lunar pull trial before. You have given them something they did not expect, a reason to believe in you. Sierra swung her legs over the side of the bed, testing her strength. Her muscles protested, but they held. And what about you? Do you believe in me? Valdrin crossed the room and knelt before her, taking her hands in his. I have believed in you since the moment you faced Rena and refused to stay down. You are stronger than you know, Sierra, and I am honored that the moon chose you for me. The bond pulls between them, warm and insistent. Sierra could feel it pulling her toward him, urging her to close the final distance. The bond, she said softly. How do we complete it? A claiming ceremony. Before the pack, Valdrin's gaze searched hers. Are you ready? Sierra thought about the girl she had been a week ago, the invisible orphan, who had hidden in grain stores and avoided attention. That girl was gone, burned away by fire and pain and the sheer force of will it had taken to survive. In her place was someone new. Someone who had fought for her place in this world. Someone who was ready to stand beside a king. Yes, Sierra said. I am ready. The ceremony was held that night in the Great Hall. The pack filled the space, every Lycan in Blackmore present to witness the completion of the mate bond. Sierra wore a dress of deep blue silk, the Blackmore crest embroidered in silver thread across the bodice. Her hair had been braided with moonflowers, and Mira had painted her lips with crimson. She looked like a queen. Valdrin stood at the center of the hall, dressed in black, with a silver circlet crowning his dark hair. When Sira entered, the crowd fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Sira walked forward, her head held high, her steps measured and deliberate. She did not flinch under their scrutiny. She had earned her place here. They would respect her, or they would answer to their king. When she reached Valdrin, he extended his hand. Sira took it, and the bond flared so brightly she could almost see it, a golden thread connecting them. Lord Kale stepped forward, holding a ceremonial blade. The mate bond is forged by the moon, but it is sealed by blood. Do you, Valdrin Blackmore, accept Sira as your mate and queen? I do, Valdrin said, his voice ringing through the hall. Lord Kale turned to Sira. And do you, Sira, accept Valdrin Blackmore as your mate and king? Sira met Valdrin's gaze and saw everything she needed to see. Respect, admiration, and the beginning of something that might, in time, become love. I do, she said. Lord Kale made a small cut on Valdrin's palm. Then on Sira's. Valdrin clasped her hand. Their blood mingling, the bond exploded. Heat flooded through Sira. Not painful, but overwhelming, filling every corner of her being with warmth and light. She could feel Valdrin's emotions as clearly as her own, his relief, his joy, his fierce protectiveness. And beneath it all, the beast, calm and content, bowing to her as it had never bowed to anyone. The curse broke. Sira gasped as she felt it shatter. The dark magic that had bound Valdrin for 7 years, dissolving like smoke. The beast remained, but it was no longer a separate entity. It was integrated, controlled, part of Valdrin rather than something fighting to escape. Valdrin pulled her into his arms, and the pack erupted in cheers. It is done, he murmured against her hair. You are mine, and I am yours. Sira buried her face in his chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was so afraid. I know. But you did not let fear stop you. That is what makes you a queen. The celebration lasted until dawn. The pack drank and feasted, and for the first time in years, there was joy in Blackmore Fortress. Sira stood at Valdrin's side, accepting congratulations from pack members who had doubted her. Listening to their stories and learning their names, she was no longer invisible. She was the Lycan Queen, and when the moon finally set and the sun rose over the mountains, Valdrin took her hand and led her back to their chambers. Not to the guest room where she had spent the past week, but to the king's chambers. Their chambers now. What happens next? Sira asked as they stood together on the balcony, watching the city wait. We rule, Valdrin said simply. Together, we face whatever challenges come, and we do it as one. Sira leaned into him, feeling the bond settle into something steady and unbreakable. I think I can do that. I know you can. Valdrin turned her to face him, his expression serious. You were never meant to be hidden, Sira. You were meant to stand in the light. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that. Sira rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the touch. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. Then let us begin, she said, and together, the Lycan King and his queen stepped into the future they had fought so hard to claim. The end.